My name is Jeff Sykes, and before I get started with my talk, I'd like to take this moment to do a little interactive survey, okay? So I need everyone to close their eyes and imagine that they're 13 years old again, okay? Okay, so you're 13 years old, okay, and you're going through the standard issues that a 13-year-old goes through, okay? You feel that no one likes you, you can't get that special someone to even remember your name, let alone give you their phone number, okay? And then someone of your same gender comes up and says, I have a solution to solve all of your problems. Become a homosexual. Okay, girls, that star quarterback, he will be your BFF. All right, he will take you to all the football games. All right, you can chill at his place. You'll never sleep with him. All right, guys, the head cheerleader, you will be invited to every single slumber party she will ever have. You will hang out with the entire cheerleading squad, the home ec class. All the girls will flock to you. Become a homosexual. You'll never be able to sleep with them. Raise your hand if this sounds like a solution to your problems. Well, that is from what I can gather, that is the pitch given to people who are part of the homosexual agenda. And I want to get something straight about gays. First and foremost, why do we use the term, or why is the term homosexual used? Because the proponents of the homosexual agenda, they will only use the term homosexual. They will never use the term gay. Because they're trying to otherize the homosexuals from the heterosexual community. Because once, according to Dr. Kathleen Taylor, author of Cruelty, Human Evil, and the Human Brain, once you've otherized a group, then you're more complacent with differential treatment towards them. It separates us from them. You see it all the time in cases of abuse. You know, it doesn't matter that I just kicked the dog. It's just a stupid dog. You know, it's okay that we punish homosexuals with imprisonment. They're just silly homosexuals. So where did the term homosexual agenda come from? It comes from Dr. Paul Cameron. He was a published psychologist who studied well the dangers of secondhand smoke. He was an associate professor of the University of Nebraska, specializing in marriage and family. But more infamously, he was the founder of the Institute for the Scientific Investigation of Sexuality. It eventually became the Family Research Council. Their logo is up there in the corner. In 1984, Lincoln, Nebraska, put a ballot measure to stop sexual orientation-based discrimination. Dr. Paul Cameron became the chairman for the committee opposing special rights for homosexuals, and through his leadership, they defeated the measure. In 1983, he performed an ISIS survey of homosexuals. Now, what did this ISIS survey come back with? According to survey results, homosexuals have between 20 and 106 partners a year. Now, this is from the survey results, and it's really awkwardly worded, but 68% of people who've died from serial killers died at the hand of homosexuals. They perpetrate between 1/3 and 1/2 of all reported child molestations. According to the ISIS survey, homosexuals have an average lifespan of 39 years. 76% of them have an STD, and 70% of them regularly ingest feces. Obviously, this is the origin of the term shitting grin. So, now let's look at the criticisms levied against the ISIS survey. Well, these criticisms come from Dr. Gregory Herrick. He was the psychologist referenced for Lawrence versus Texas and Perry versus Schwarzenegger. Lawrence versus Texas was the Supreme Court case which struck down sodomy laws, and Perry versus Schwarzenegger was the infamous Prop 8 legal challenge. First and foremost, it had a small sample size. They claimed it was nationwide, and I guess you could say that if you used it in the loosest terms possible. They had seven municipalities, including Los Angeles, DC, Denver, Colorado, and Louisville, Kentucky. There was also an unacceptably low response rate. The survey in question had over 500 questions and took 75 minutes to complete. Only 43% of them completed a significant portion, and only 23% completed all of it. There was publicized research bias. Not only had Dr. Cameron publicized or spoken about what he was doing, he also spoke about what he was looking for and other things which could bias the results. In the release of the survey, it never talked about how well the interviewees were trained. If you're not very careful when giving an interview, you can give subtle clues which will guide responses one way or another. And then finally, the overall validity of it was questioned. Not only because of possible interviewee fatigue, I mean, who has 75 minutes to just sit there and answer questions? But there was quite a media circus around this. A police officer from Omaha, Nebraska, was quoted as saying that this survey has some raunchy material because it was talking about sex and sexuality in 1983. And he advised people not to take it. Now, this alone opens the door for people to be aware of this and just have fun with it, such as 70% of homosexuals regularly ingesting feces. 76. Oh, 76? Okay. So what are the goals of the homosexual agenda? Recruitment, indoctrination, militarization, and suppression. First, let's talk about recruitment. Now, I'm sure you're aware that homosexuals cannot naturally reproduce. So they're going to have to recruit more. And you've basically got this multi-level marketing scheme. I recruit you, and then you go out and recruit more, and then they go out and recruit more. The only problem is that this has a worse payment scheme than Amway. Supposedly the homosexual recruiters target impressionable young males. Apparently, females don't get recruited. I guess they have to volunteer. Sexual abuse has been suggested as a way to recruit. There are many stories about how a homosexual was abused sexually by a person of their own gender. If that's the case, the Catholic Church is cranking them out. There was a book written called The Pink Swastika, which likens the homosexual agenda in general to the Nazis, because we all know how close-knit the homosexuals were with the Nazis. And in The Pink Swastika, Lively and Abrams liken it to the Hitler Youth. Next, we're going to move on to indoctrination. Indoctrination is the idea of teaching straights that it's okay for someone to be gay, to be homosexual. They view this as brainwashing. They feel that this indoctrination normalizes same-sex relationships. Public schools are using books such as And Tango Makes Three, in which a penguin has two daddies, or Heather Has Two Mommies, in which Heather has two mommies. Also, gay anti-bullying and diversity classes further indoctrinate these children into thinking that it's okay to be gay. And with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, there's now a belief that indoctrination will be working its way into the U.S. military, and specifically sissifying it. So next we're going to move on to what they claim is militarization. It all started with the Stonewall riots, which was in 1969. This happened 5 days after the death of Judy Garland. She was a prominent gay icon, much like Madonna and Cher. Well, the police busted into the Stonewall Inn and tried to arrest these homosexuals, including gays, lesbians, and drag queens. Don't mess with the drag queens. Just save yourself the trouble. During the riots, because we all know that whenever gays riot, whenever homosexuals riot, it's going to be a musical. Every reference I've seen all talk about the chorus line. We are the Stonewall girls. We wear our hair in curls. And they were just taunting the police. Next, we have the Stonewall riot, the Hamilton Square riots. And I have riots in quotation marks because it all depends on who you ask. Conservapedia and religious references all talk about it being a riot. Secular sources all talk about it being a protest. According to the religious sources, the rioters were chanting, "Give us your children." This is really important because the idea that homosexuals are pedophiles is pervasive. Just a few months ago, Oral Roberts University, yes, Oral Roberts, talked about pedophilia in the homosexual agenda. Dr. Chuck McElhenney, he was a prominent anti-homosexual activist. He claims that his church and his house were both firebombed. Conservapedia is the only reference I've been able to find about that. And all the references that they provide are dead links. Next, after the passage of Prop 8, there was a protest in the Castro district of San Francisco. If you go to YouTube, you'll see all these videos entitled When Gays Attack. It was a group of missionaries walking through the streets, escorted by police, while the crowd around chants, "Shame on you." It is so very difficult to count the dead and injured because you can't count to zero. Finally, we have Christine Cloud. She was a missionary in the Castro district protest of 2008, and she went on Bill O'Reilly claiming that a homosexual activist grabbed her Bible and beat her with it. The police came and stopped him. However, she decided not to press charges, so they released him without question. She then went back some days later to file a police report. This is really convenient because now we just have her word that it happened. We don't have the name of the officers who intervened. We don't have the name of the person who did it. And when pressed on the details, because Bill O'Reilly was trying to make it seem like the police officers were just standing there watching the beating because, well, they're part of the liberal media, until they finally decided to go and step in. She kind of backed off the idea as to whether or not they observed it, and maybe they just happened to be walking by. So next we have supposed suppression. Many people have said anti-homosexual remarks and either lost their jobs or been forced to apologize. Clint McCants was a Arkansas school board member in a rural town in Arkansas. He posted on his Facebook. This was during the media frenzy surrounding several homosexuals who had committed suicide after bullying for being gay. He said that all the homosexuals should just go and kill themselves. It would make his life easier. Needless to say, people didn't take kindly to that. After much controversy, he ended up resigning. Patty Stranger was a matchmaker who, on her daytime talk show, said that she actually said gay relationships. So she's not an advocate of the homosexual agenda, but she said that all gay relationships are open, basically implying that gay men cannot be monogamous. And after much outrage, she backed off that also. Tracy Morgan is a comedian, he still is, and in a show in Nashville, he went on an anti-homosexual tirade. One of the things that he said, and probably the most appropriate, was that if he ever found out his son was gay, he'd stab him. So now it's time to do a little pinky smirk and wonder, what if there was a real homosexual agenda? What would it look like? Because obviously this conspiracy theory is the lamest, even as conspiracy theory standards go? Well, first and foremost, you'd see character assassination. Facts need not apply. You know, the most we have is speculation about the sexuality of Michelle Bachmann's husband. I'm not a fan of gaydar, but you know, until some hard evidence comes forward. All right. You'd also, pardon the pun. You'd also see an infringement of free speech. Right now, it's just my free speech saying, I don't like what you said, take it back. True infringement of free speech would be something along the lines of, oh, you don't like homosexuals, let's see how well you don't like them after a year in prison. There would be mandatory homosexuals in the Boy Scouts and the military. There would be nationwide same-sex marriage. None of this protesting and let's try to get it on the balance. No, there would be a mandate. Finally, there would be RuPaul as secretary to the fabulous. So that concludes my discussion on getting something straight about gays. Thank you.
And that's one of the most important things that I think that we should talk about is the infringement of free speech. Because when you tell someone that you can't say anything anti-hate speeches, then I feel like you're also, and I'm obviously that's not appropriate, but then I feel like we do have an infringement of free speech. And what do you think is the best approach to just have in general about free speech?
The question was about is stifling hateful speech free speech? And I'm of two minds of that, because free speech is responsible speech, and I'm perfectly happy with you saying I don't like gays. That's fine. However, when you advocate harm against them, or you say things which are demonstrably untrue, I question whether or not that's an abuse of free speech. And when it comes to rights, I guess, in order to have the rights, you have to be able to understand people are going to abuse them. So,
how do you think that's changed? Because now it's very inappropriate to say anything bad about minorities, unless they're Latinos, of course. So how do you think that do you think that there's going to be one day where hopefully we'll progress for that being as much as inappropriate as talking about minorities badly?
I'm not sure I understand.
I guess it's, okay, when people say something bad about Jewish people or Black people, that seems as offensive. I don't think it's seen as offensive when people are talking bad about gay people. So do you think we'll ever progress to the point where it's just as bad?
Yes. Every year, the idea of being anti-gay becomes a little bit more taboo. Bear in mind that in 1969, not only was homosexuality a crime in most, if not all, states, but it was actually a mental disorder. We've come a long way. but we still have a long way to go. And that goes the same with all minorities. At one time, they were all fringe groups, and I'm sure there's a better word for that. Marginalized, that's it. They were all marginalized groups. However, now now we understand that each one of them brings valuable information and ways of looking at things to the table, and we should have one big happy family.
Hi.
You're next.
All speech should be protected, even hate speech, unless you are inciting violence. That's the First Amendment. Even though we don't like it, we should protect it until the end. But free speech goes both ways. So if we're asking someone for an apology for saying something really bad, that's not a legal infringement of free speech. It works both ways.
Right. That's one thing that I agree with. I personally feel that censorship can only come from someone in charge. So when someone says something mean and hateful against a marginalized group, when that group says, we don't like that, please take it back, it's not censorship, it's free speech.
Yeah, sort of along the same lines. I was just going to say that freedom of speech is not freedom from consequences for your speech. I don't have the right to a job if I say something that goes against my boss's. It could be a lot of different things. For a lot of things, I can be fired for, I don't know, if I call my boss ugly, that's not infringing on my free speech to not be able to call my boss ugly. And I was also going to say that...
But you won't get arrested.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, it doesn't seem to me like much of the legislation about... It seems like it's more hate crime than hate speech. And if you buy the idea that motivation changes a crime, which a lot of times we do when we say that running over someone is different when you do it by accident or on purpose because you hate them, then I can see how motivation for a crime based on what you're saying at the time could go into it.
And that's a valid concern or a valid point. One more question?
Well, just a comment, just joining the bandwagon about free speech. Someone is free to say that they don't like gay people. I'm free to say they're an idiot. But also to address the comment about will the time come, times do change and the groups that were marginalized become more accepted. I mean, it used to be there were signs up in businesses saying no Irish need apply, and these days you cannot dream of saying something about those dirty Irishmen and Ireland. And it's getting there very slowly. But the marginalized groups, now we have born-again Irishmen who are so big on their Irishness and how the Irish state civilization and all that sort of thing. So it happens in cycles, and we are coming out of ours.